with as much criticism as there's been for James Gunn's DCU Superman movie, I figured let's take a look back at one of the more controversial Superman movies at the time, and a lot more hated nowadays compared to when it was released, and that is Superman Returns, directed by Bryan Singer. People have given this movie a reputation of being bad nowadays, and is it a bad movie? No. But it is with its faults. Superman. Superman hadn't been seen in theaters since Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, which was a financial bomb and also just not a good film in general. That being said, there was a newer rendition that Bryan Singer wanted to do on the character of Superman, but also staying true to Christopher Reeve's version. As a matter of fact, continuity in this movie is oftentimes confused because this is supposed to be a continuation of Superman 2 and not anything to do with Superman 3 and 4.
Everybody got that?
Bryan Singer, as you guys know, directed the X-Men movies in the early 2000s, and he left the project to direct this Superman movie, and he only agreed to direct it if it was a continuation of Christopher Reeve's version of the character, which in a lot of ways is cool, but at the same time is actually the biggest fault that the movie has, refusing to establish its own identity. The story of Superman Returns is Kal-El returns back to Earth after discovering that Krypton is fully destroyed, and returns back to Earth finding that Lois Lane has had a child and moved on. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor has been released from prison since he was not there to attend the trial for Luthor. This version of Lex Luthor is trying to create his own land, much like the first movie, but this time using Kryptonian crystals that he stole from the Fortress of Solitude. It's up to Superman to stop Lex Luthor and also to ruin Lois Lane's life with Richard, her man that she's married to. Yeah, the story gets pretty weird, not gonna lie to you guys. But I'm gonna say a lot of positives in this review. Brandon Routh as Superman, I gotta say, he is actually really good in this movie. I really like the way he looks in the suit. I also love the personality that he brings to the character when it's his own. And that's the biggest problem with the movie, is the fact that the dialogue that they give him, they don't really give him much to work with in the overall story. And also there's not really much screen time of him for him to truly shine as Superman nor Clark Kent. And the scenes that they do give him in the movie, they're trying to have him imitate Christopher Reeves instead of being his own thing, which is the biggest hindrance to his performance, because in the Crisis CW show, they showed that he was a phenomenal Superman when he was allowed to do his own thing, sporting a phenomenal costume. Which, speaking of the costume in this movie, I really like the Superman suit that Brandon Routh wears in this movie. It looks a lot more traditional, but also adds a couple of those early 2000s elements that are kind of a guilty pleasure of mine with the leather cape. I know a lot of people are not a big fan of the darker red. I really dig it. I also think the boot design is really unique, and the S on the belt I don't think is seen very often in comic books. Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane is solid enough. However, I will say that I never particularly saw her as a good Lois Lane. I just saw her as being a solid one. But when I kind of watch her in this movie, she feels very stilted in many elements, and the story doesn't really do her much favors in terms of me trying to like her character. This story really makes her seem like she's not really a good person, as I just was not a big fan with how they incorporated a love triangle between Superman, Lois, and Richard in this movie. It was something that was completely unnecessary, and it really made Lois Lane look like a villain in this movie, to be honest. Like, she really seems like a terrible person, having Superman's child and then basically fooling Richard into believing it's his child. That's just weird.
Are not the father.
And in my opinion, what it does to Richard, or should I say James Marsden in this movie, it really makes him seem kind of like a cuck.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
I mean, I don't want to say that, but like it kind of does, and I don't know, it's like Bryan Singer has something against James Marsden because he did him dirty as Cyclops and he's doing him dirty as Richard in this movie. Standout performance in this movie to me, 110%, is in fact Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. Despite who he is as a person in real life, I will say the performance that he gives in this movie is phenomenal. And hot take, I actually prefer his Lex Luthor to that of Gene Hackman. He has that charisma and that eccentric charm while also being a very weird and twisted version on the character, and also incredibly menacing at some points in the movie, especially in that scene where he's beating the mess out of Superman. He also delivers one of my favorite lines in a comic book movie with one word: kryptonite.
Kryptonite. Kryptonite. Kryptonite. Kryptonite.
And 100% would definitely take him over Eisenberg any day.
Fight, fight, fight! Martha, Martha, Martha.
There are many phenomenal action sequences throughout the film as well that also display a lot of great Superman visuals throughout. Some of my favorite sequences being that of the plane rescue, that was phenomenal. Also adore the city rescue where he's finding creative solutions to kind of save people in the city while also showing and utilizing his abilities well on screen. Film also has just really beautiful shots that feel incredibly Superman. My favorite shot being when he's like hovering over the world and you see him listening to crimes over the earth. Also love the part where he also flies up to the sun and just intakes the sun's radiation and gets more powerful. However, the film does have some very questionable shots, but then again, what can I say? I mean, The Flash exists, and much like many DC movies, the music in this movie is phenomenal. They do a rendition on the John Williams score, and it sounds very good. I mean, especially that opening sequence, I mean, it just goes perfectly with those credits. The biggest problem is that the movie really outdates itself. The movie doesn't particularly do anything new or refreshing for the character of Superman. It remakes Christopher Reeve's Superman, but with double the runtime. Very slow sequences and oftentimes dull moments throughout, which has probably led to you skipping ahead to the highlights of the film. It's funny how many people complain about Man of Steel being a dark and dour film, but this film really started that trend for the character. As a matter of fact, the film can face tonal whiplash at times, often mimicking Reeves but also trying to be a dark drama at the same time. The film often fails to evoke emotion since the highs aren't super high and the lows often just drag out the runtime. It should feel like I should feel something when Superman potentially dies in this movie, but I didn't by the end of it. And all it does is just lead to more unbearable runtime. The biggest mistake is that the film doesn't commit to an identity. The coolest parts are when it's its own thing, not rehashing Lex real estate plans again and prior Superman performances. That being said, there are many things to enjoy in this movie. The story is actually still pretty solid enough. The visuals are still pretty awesome. The action has enjoyment. Kevin Spacey. The plot twist with the sun is incredibly ballsy at points, but Superman Returns is just not a bad film, but it just lacks a lot of originality, and it's unfortunately led to the film being dated. So while Superman Returns is not a bad film, I do think that it's not particularly an original one, and I would still recommend that you check it out if you are a Superman fan, but don't go into it expecting something that's going to be ground changing for the character and something that really changes up the character in a new and refreshing way.